This year I made it my New Year's resolution to try and see 100 films that I've never seen before and review all of them. Obviously that's going to take a long time, so I'm going to limit myself to 15 seconds for each review and release them in batches of 25. I'm up to 50 now, so obviously this is the second video, and so please enjoy it and check out the first one if you haven't already. Jigoku is about the accidental meeting of Japan's biggest dickheads, who all scamper about in total darkness so you can't see what's going on, and then they all fucking die, and then they all go to hell, and they all get their shit ruined for the last 40 minutes of the film. The Sweatbox is a documentary following the production of The Emperor's New Groove from its start as a more ambitious artistic project called Kingdom of the Sun, through changes by Disney executives, right up to meetings with McDonald's about the toy range. It's heartbreaking. Creepshow is an anthology horror film that has trouble with tone. The first one is not scary, but wait, was it meant to be funny? The second one is pretty funny, but then, oh shit, that's horrific. And is that Leslie Nielsen? Surely you don't expect me to be scared of Leslie Nielsen. Get it? Surely? Because it's... Sexy Beast is a British film about a retired gangster whose former friend, a dangerous lunatic, tries to force him into one last job. They say the word cunt a lot in this film, so if me saying it just then made you flinch, then I would avoid this one. I don't know why I watched Felix the Cat the movie. I wouldn't recommend you do it. It wasn't good. For some reason Felix reminds me of Sonic the Hedgehog, and if you do watch this against my recommendation, do tell me if he reminds you of Sonic the Hedgehog, because he reminded me of Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't really know why that is, so if you have any thoughts about... Possession is about a couple who are breaking up because the wife is cheating on her husband with God, I think? I'm hard pressed to say what it was actually about, but it had some really great intense performances in it, and people spewing fluids in a subway, so that's always cool. The Diary of a Teenage Girl begins with a titular 15-year-old starting a sexual relationship with her mother's boyfriend, and from there we watch as she makes more and more bad decisions. I actually found this so difficult to watch that I felt queasy through most of the film, but it was definitely a great film and one that I'd highly recommend. Mary and Max is a stop-motion dark comedy about a lonely young Australian girl and an old American man who become unlikely pen friends. This film has a warm heart wrapped with a cold, cruel humour that's very enjoyable. I went into Ishtar having been promised the worst film of all time, and I wouldn't have called it that at all. If anything, there were some parts that showed some genuine wit, and I enjoyed the chemistry between the characters. It also had the best boob flash I've ever seen in a film. Its biggest problem really was the terrible slow pacing. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a pretty standard action film, I think I'd say. It was better than I expected. The CG apes were really good. They didn't quite hold up during close-ups though. The sequel, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, opens with a close-up as if to show how much better the CG got. This one was a lot more of a straightforward action film, honestly, and I was a bit disappointed by the characters in the end. Both okay films. Wetlands is a female POV gross-out comedy about a young woman with bad personal hygiene who ends up in hospital after an accident while shaving her arsehole. It had the most erect cocks I've ever seen in a film, which would have been the case even if there was just one, but there was at least 4 in one scene, all jizzing on a pizza. So if that floats your boat, you know... The Gate was pretty boring. I watched it because I knew it had cool goblin creatures in it, which it did, but it was so slow-paced I eventually got distracted and stopped paying attention. Warm Bodies came out in 2013 to capitalise on the supernatural romance craze started by Twilight. This time, instead of a vampire romance, it was a zombie romance. I expected this to be a so bad it's good film that I could laugh at, but I actually enjoyed it. True love saves the day and a girl kisses a zombie. What's not to like? We Are the Best is a coming-of-age story about Swedish girls who form a punk band despite not knowing how to play any instruments and everyone telling them that punk is dead. Very cute film, adorable. I would recommend it. If you ever lay awake at night worrying about your unavoidable mortality, I would not recommend Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. It's supposed to be a comedy, but I couldn't quite get over the oppressive bleakness of everyone on Earth being acutely aware they were going to fucking die. Besides, it's a pretty straightforward Manic Pixie Dream Girl film complete with Converse shoes and vinyl records, so I think you can give this one a miss if you want. I watched the Powerpuff Girls movie directly after the last movie as a palate cleanser. The graphic design is much better than I expected, and it's a cute little kids film. I don't know how much kids would get it if they haven't already seen the show. Maybe it doesn't matter. Who cares? I'm not going to spend too much effort reviewing the Powerpuff Girls movie. Black Rain is about Michael Douglas being a dirty but determined New York cop who wants to catch the bad guy even if it's out of his jurisdiction and no one wants him to and he's under no obligation whatsoever. I find I can't get on board with films where the protagonist has no real reason to keep going, and on top of that he was an arsehole. So, no. Wristcutters, a love story, is a road trip movie set in an afterlife, populated only by people who committed suicide, where everything is basically the same but a little shittier and no one can smile. It has the guy from Gogol Bordello and Tom Waits in it. Not at all as much of a downer as the name suggests. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is whimsical as fuck, and I love me a bit of whimsy. This is a film about the biggest bullshitter ever and how he tries to fuck everyone's wives. Great kids film. A+, recommended, 5 stars. For kids. Fish Story is made up of several short, seemingly unrelated stories. It includes a haunted cassette tape, a failing band's last record, and an upcoming apocalypse by meteor. It's not hard-hitting or difficult, just a silly feel-good movie, but it's one of my favourites. They Live is a science fiction action film starring Roddy Wrestleman. It's so deep. It's possibly the deepest film with a 6-minute punch-up over someone refusing to try on some glasses. I think it's up there. It's in with a good chance. Definitely. I just had to see what those ubiquitous yellow bastards are all about. If I was going by Facebook alone, I would assume minions were just mouthpieces for passive-aggressive aunties. Truth be told, I kind of liked it, but I think that was largely because a surprising amount of it was set in London. I'm not going to recommend it, but I'm not going to say to avoid it either. If you've seen any other Wes Anderson films, you probably already know if you'll like The Grand Budapest Hotel. It's a whimsical narrative about a fictional war-torn country steeped in a sort of general nostalgia for a time and place that never was, with adventure and intrigue. Good film. I know everyone is sick of zombie films now, but if you only ever see one, it should be The Return of the Living Dead. It has its own interesting take on zombie conventions without seeming above it all, a good mix of comedy and actual horror as opposed to campy horror, and a really cool soundtrack. It's one of my favourites.